Wait, I'm not Dave. As week 10 comes to a close, Dave is off in Japan, and I'm here to make sure that these two knuckleheads don't eat their young. Welcome to Political Football, everybody. For those of you who don't know, I'm the Iceman Matt Frates, one half of Iceman and Coach, and with me today are the two other members of Political Football that normally would be here. First, Clev, what's up, pal?
I'm here because I don't want to get fined.
You're here because you won't get fined. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. He is wearing a Jets cap and all. And of course, we have the smartest of all the knuckleheads, Scott. And Mr. I can't find my email. How you doing, buddy?
Listen, if I'm the smartest of all the knuckleheads, then you need new knuckleheads because that's not good.
Why is that not good? From what I understand, you're one of the most professional people here. You actually have a real job looking at real players and real talent.
But listen, you I texted you earlier that I didn't have the link that I did. I texted you yesterday, I didn't have the show sheets that I had. That's enough. That's me.
That is enough. You know? Well, I will say this. If we were evaluating the talent here halfway through the show, maybe we'll give you a not so passing grade. However, today we got kind of a packed show, fellas, because while week 10 maybe in terms of the football wasn't the greatest, I think that in terms of storylines, I would consider us halfway through the season. Do you think that's fair compromise? Excellent. Yeah. So we're going to be looking at rookie quarterbacks. We're going to be looking at first-year head coaches, and then Cleve is going to get to fire every head coach in the NFL. But I want to start with some of the things I think that popped out from week 10. And I think the first thing is the Thursday night game. Lamar, Joe Burrow, great game. And honestly, it was a showcase of, I think, the future of quarterbacking in this league. It just stinks that one of the teams can't get their act together. But Scott, you first. What did you think of the game?
You know, the vibes around Cincinnati were strange to start the season. Burrow's Burrow. He's great. Lamar is great too. You know, the T. Higgins situation seems really, I would just say curious. I don't know if that's the best word for what's happening there with him. He's an important part. I mean, wide receiver too, there is very important, but you know, the Burrow Chase combination is just ridiculous. It just is. Yeah. So it's fun to watch. And those, you know, it's interesting too because Baltimore's defense was awesome last year, and they are not right now at all. They're kind of a bad defense, but Lamar is making it all go. And Derrick Henry, we've got to bring him up too.
Oh, absolutely.
Great game.
The thing is, those two teams, when I watch them, I think they almost kind of mirror each other because the quarterback play was outstanding the other night. I mean, Joe Burrow this season, I think objectively has been great. I mean, if the team had any semblance of a defense, that team should be a winning ball club. And so it's amazing when you think about the trajectory of both teams. And I think the Ravens are in a much better spot. Come the playoff time, that might be interesting, but it just kind of goes to show that defense doesn't translate every single year. Cleve, I'm sure you wanted to fire every head coach that game, but what'd you think about that game?
Honestly, I think Lamar doesn't get the credit he should. He's actually better than Burrow, in my opinion. He actually has better numbers when they go head to head. Great game, actually. But again, Lamar doesn't get the credit that he should. I actually watched him. I'm like, wow, this guy's a really good quarterback. And if there's still doubts about his ability, they should be gone.
Is it that there's doubts about his ability, or at this point, is it the fact that there's doubts about his ability to win in the moments that matter the most? I'm not saying that that's the case, but I think that is the narrative that's been building with him. And I think during the regular season, amazing. I think we all three of us agree that talent-wise, there's nobody in the league that can do what he does. But when it seems like it comes down to the crunchest of crunch times, something on that team, it's not necessarily him, doesn't seem to translate. I think that's probably where we're at with him.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. His playoff numbers are not great. They're just, you know, Burrow has taken his team further in the playoffs than Lamar has. I mean, just as from a regular season standpoint, there's this notion that Lamar is a running quarterback,
which is absurd,
right? And that's I know he's such a good pocket passer. He's really accurate. He can make, he does ridiculous things, and then it's the legs come in, right, where he's an outrageous runner. But this notion that he's not a good passer is just it's sort of buried in some old school kind of nonsense. I don't know of any other good way to describe that. It's bullshit, right? It just is.
It's buried in, I think, jealousy of not having a quarterback that good, right? And like,
it's buried in race.
Well, yes, of course it is. But at the same time, like, there are so many teams or fans of teams, I feel like, and I don't think Cleve is in this category because you just gave him his flowers, but it's like, I don't have a quarterback and that guy plays quarterback. I love him to have him. So I'm going to put him down because he doesn't win the biggest of games when my team can't win any games. Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to with Lamar. Yeah. But
the reason I said that was because of when he could have been available, every team took a pass on him that could have gotten him, including my stupid ass Jets. So yeah, we deserve what we deserve.
Quarterback play is so important in the NFL today. It's so much so that it has changed the entire trajectory of economics, really, if you think about it. Like, when the Cleveland Browns are willing to just hand over the kind of money that they hand over to Watson, and you guys have been over that, we've been over that. We don't need to like walk over his dead corpse at this point, but it's changed everything. And to the point where now, like, so many franchises are willing to take bets on everybody, but yet somehow, some way, no team was willing to pony up the dough for Lamar Jackson, which I don't understand. Like, when you go back and think about it, they should be writing reports and books about that offseason. Like, what weren't teams in on? And look at some of the teams that were in on it now, like the Falcons. I mean, are the Falcons any better with Kirk Cousins than they would have been with Lamar Jackson, especially with the weapons they have? Like, I think that could be like a linchpin for so many franchises when these franchises have been consistently mediocre and they're like, why can't we win? Well, because you weren't willing to take the chance on a guy who absolutely elevates a team. So,
yeah, it makes you wonder, was there a little colluding happening between the owners?
Wait, whoa. You're not saying Jerry's a racist, are you?
No, I'm just saying
he didn't fit the culture.
He fits the culture. That's right.
I'm just saying they may have just decided that nobody was paying him.
Yeah, that I think is 100% true. Now, we obviously had Liam earlier. We got my co-host, Brad, who's going to be on a show. I'm doing a double header tonight, fellas. So I'm going to be doing double dipping tonight. But you're right about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning did lose a lot of big games. And even when you look at his career, 2 chips, but one of them he really wasn't that big of a part of. It was a defense that he rode. And everybody says how he's one of the greatest ever. So I think Lamar gets a chip. We're talking about something different, but interesting, the 2 trajectories of that. So I think we want to move on to a team that we know the trajectory of, Kansas City Chiefs. But somebody said this to me, and I want to hear you guys individually. Cleve, we'll start with you. My brother-in-law said this is the most uninspiring, undefeated team of all time.
I second that. I might have third that and fourth that. The way they win is improbable, and it feels like God is on their side, or they just get the calls or whatever. But for sure, that game in Denver, I didn't know how they won that game. So,
wow.
The numbers aren't gaudy, they aren't great, but they somehow win, and they're 9-0. It's just crazy that they're 9-0.
You are what your record says you are.
Yeah, some of it is. I know they have Mahomes, and he is legit rock star. But outside of that, Kelsey's there, but he's aging, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of buzz around their individual players outside of Mahomes and maybe Kelsey. And I think Kelsey's taken some heat.
Yes.
But it just doesn't feel like there is buzz around that team. And I think everybody's tired of them already.
Are you guys tired of them?
It's not sexy. It's not sexy, man. It's just it's mid football. That's about it. It ain't sexy.
I think Cleve nails it. It is kind of a boring brand of winning football. It gets old.
It does.
Right?
And I think the reason it gets old for me is it's not the personalities per se. Like, I don't have an issue with Mahomes. I think Mahomes is a pretty likable guy. He seems to be a great teammate. He seems to embody everything that you want, right, in your franchise quarterback. I think it's the fact that they started out so dynamic and they were stretching the field. They were exciting to watch. It was kind of a breath of fresh air, right? And now you've seen offense come down across the NFL for one reason or another. And Mahomes is out there not dinking and dunking per se, but it feels like death by 1,000 paper cuts. And honestly, they might be the poster children for unexciting football across the board, because I think there is not as much excitement as there was 5 or 6 years, even 3 years ago. And maybe I'm overstating that, but just watching Red Zone, it's like not many games have really popped off to me the way that they have in the past.
Well, offense is certainly down. I mean, it is.
Why do you guys think that is?
Cleve, do you have any thoughts?
Clearly not.
I think, yeah, I think honestly, bro, I think it's because they don't have like superstars, right? They're aging superstars, Kelsey. That's pretty much it. They're running backs. I can pick them out in the lineup. And who's their number one receiver, right? So
It's hilarious you
I
use
know.
those words.
To pick him out of a lineup since one of their
Good with
what's
Kareem
the-
Hunt.
pick him out of a lineup.
pick him out. Kareem
that's
Hunt.
funny.
What about She Rice? Wasn't he driving a car like 120 miles an hour? Probably should have been picked out of a lineup. Whatever.
Whatever.
They're
Who
not quite the
knows?
Georgia Bulldogs, but they're getting there.
This got dark.
Did it get dark? You're the one.
This got
Hey,
dark. No pun
Hey, it was your
intended.
words we used against you,
Yeah.
my man.
Oh, yeah. No, it's in a nutshell. It's not sexy. I'm seeing improv football, and they're just winning. I think they until this stops working, they're just going to continue to just kind of roll in this pattern. You know, I don't think that
Well,
they're going to.
it's worked so many ways already.
They're flashing. Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
mean, early in Mahomes' career, they were super exciting to watch because it was, there was an 80-yard touchdown waiting to happen. And they move away from Hill because I think in some ways Hill was detrimental to their offensive, to just the way they wanted to run their offense.
Oh boy.
Maybe a little bit like Mahomes felt obligated to fire the ball down the field a little too much, and that wasn't necessarily the best from a X's and O's kind of winning standpoint. So now they're doing it boring. They're dinking and dunking and kind of like, we're just it's going to be an 8 or a 10 play drive. You can't stop us. Cool, whatever. They can do it anyway.
It's so frustrating though.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I mean, they have taken what the Patriots once had. Right? They've ripped away all of the power, almost like the Infinity Stones that the Patriots once had for 20 years. And we thought they were going to do it in a way that was different. And it doesn't seem like they really are, right? I think winning football is winning football. And Andy Reid is like, I don't really care how we get it done as long as we get it done. And in terms of dollars and cents for the Chiefs organization, it works, right? So they're not here to please us, but that's why we have a platform and a show so we can bitch and moan about the fact that they are playing boring ass football with the most dynamic player in the friggin' league.
Yep.
Rant over.
Yeah.
What can I say? Period. End of story. Let's talk about a team, guys, that is dynamic. How about the best team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions? Can we get a round of applause for the Detroit Lions? Yes. Big comeback win. By the way, was watching that game and my dad was like, the Lions don't look like a 7-1 team. I got up the next morning and I said, you know what, Dad? You're right, because they're an 8-1 football team.
It's kind of that's another team where, you find a way to win. And normally, historically, I'm 54. The Lions have never been able to do these kind of things. I never. So to see them doing some of this stuff as poorly as they played at times in that game, to come away with a win on the road there, down the way they were with as many picks as Goff threw, it's crazy that they won. But, big picture, adversity is a good thing. It's a good thing for teams to face adversity and overcome it. This is going to be I think this will be one of those moments that they look back on and think, yeah, that helped us. As poorly as we did play in the first half, it's a good thing we did, that we were able to overcome that. But they're exciting. They can do lots of different things on offense, but that's a really good football team. It makes me uncomfortable to say it because I'm a Lions fan. And it's just like, yeah, I don't want to say that, but they are one of the best teams in the NFL. And it's just crazy to see stuff like we saw on Sunday night.
Absolutely. I mean, God, I think what you were saying is that the Lions were going to win the Super Bowl.
I am not going there. That is no. But with the schedule looking the way it does, they're in a really nice position. They get Minnesota at home. They get Green Bay at home. They get the Bears twice. They get Jacksonville with no Trevor Lawrence this week. It looks good. And the last thing I'll say, and then Cleve, you could tell us what you thought. That the Lions are a young team. They have young players playing in important positions. So it's not like this is a team full of aging veterans where the window opens for a year or two, and then we'll see. They're ascending, and it makes me very uncomfortable to talk about them as positively as I am. just because of the history with what they are. But this is a very different team than I've ever. This is unique and new and fun. That's there you go.
Scott, let me ask you a question. Is Jared Goff the quarterback for this entire ascension, or is there a point where perhaps they need to think about something that continues to grow with the pieces that they have?
It's really, his story is super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For brevity's sake, he got drafted by the Rams, went to a terrible situation with Jeff Fisher, and then went to sort of the opposite with Sean McVay. But the problem with McVay was he did not allow Goff to grow as a player. So I've always kind of described it like you got a bunch of kids at home and you've never exposed them to the washing machine or the dryer and they don't have a clue. So they go to college and then they're like, what the hell's the machine in the corner for? And then, so whose fault is it that they don't know how to operate the laundry machine, right? In some ways, it's my fault for not doing that. And that's kind of what McVay did to Goff. So when the trade happened, the Stafford Goff trade happened, there was a little upside with Goff just because he'd never been forced to kind of grow up and learn and read what defenses were doing and sort of figure it out. He's done that in Detroit. So the really long answer I just gave, yes, I think he's the quarterback for a while here, but it's very clear that there's schematically they can do a bunch of different things. Is he a perfect quarterback? No, but
there isn't.
I think he's the guy for the next 4, 5, 6 years, and that's projecting out into the future as far as I think we really need to be thinking about. Who knows what happens into the future?
Hey, Cleve, have you decided to trade in your fandom to jump on the Lions bandwagon? Because Coach is already there. Dave allowed him to jump on a couple weeks ago. So are you there yet?
I sent the carry-on luggage. I haven't put my bags on just yet because the 5 picks do scare me. I've never seen a quarterback throw 5 picks. Well, no, I have. I've seen Romo do it.
I was like, wait a minute. Plenty of quarterbacks. Fitzy did it for the Jets when they needed a playoff
Not
win.
5. Did he throw 5?
It was plenty enough.
Over the season, we had to pick a game. We had like 18 picks or whatever, but 5 picks. They looked good. I'm just picking on the 5 picks for some odd reason, but they're scary good. They're scary good.
Though.
I'm rooting for them. I'll go full-fledged probably like after week 13, 14 to see where they're going to land, but they looked scary good. That running back I'm a running back guy. That running back by committee is crazy.
Of course. Yeah, but that's what I was going to say, actually. Before we dropped audio, we were talking about how boring the Chiefs are. I don't find this team to be boring. I find them to be really fun to watch because I think personality-wise, they have a lot of the pieces. I mean, even without Hutchinson, they still have, there's something about them that is gravitating to watch. And I find myself rooting for them every single week because not only are they good, but again, they're like, I want to say they're anti-Chiefs in that way, where they're doing what they have to do to win, but you don't feel like, not the Lions again.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask for. However, a team that we are saying, is the Dallas Cowboys, fellas, because the Dallas Cowboys took one of the biggest shits on television I've ever seen, and they did so in a way that told me that they're all in. And I find this situation to be laughable, avoidable, and just great content for the show. I want to say this, though. We joke about all in because I think Jerry did say that in the offseason, and I have a theory about this that I think is worthy of this show. Is it wasn't the fact that they were all in, because you want to hear that from your owner, you want to hear that from your team. It was how it was sold. It was, we're all in, but we're not going to do anything to prove that we're all in. We're going to basically run it back, do nothing in free agency, sure, pay our receiver, pay our quarterback, but that's it. And it's the same thing, even with the injuries. The offense looked horrible. Like, everything that's happening in Dallas is inexcusable, and heads need to roll. I think that is fair.
Yeah. Cleve, are we firing Mike McCarthy?
We'll get there, fellas. Don't get too ahead of me, huh?
Well, I'm trying to get the firing.
He's gonna hold on. First of all, when we do fire or hire or fire these coaches, for Cleve, it's going to be whether they get the guillotine in the town square. That's really what it is. How they're going to get fired for Cleve. He's firing everybody. There'll be no head coaches by the end of the year. But the Cowboys, Cleve, your thoughts on the Cowboys?
Well, obviously, I sentiment you exactly to verbatim about being all in and not being all in. The running back situation is awful. Receivers are awful. Your quarterback's out that you paid. You got a couple of key guys still out. What I took away from that game was Micah Parsons' comments about him, which I thought was a little bit off, especially for a guy who is not available. And you know me, your best ability is availability, and he's not available. So you don't get to talk like that about a coach that's probably preparing and just can't. He's hamstrung because Jerry Jones runs that team from pillar to post. So, yes, he's a bad coach, but to take a shot at a guy when we know he's the Walking Dead, it's kind of in poor taste, and it just goes to the shit show that is the Dallas Cowboys.
The Walking Dead. Well, we think, right? And we'll get to whether we were going to fire him later. I think that's the problem with the Cowboys, is that coaches that we think should be the Walking Dead end up not being the Walking Dead with Jerry. I always say this, and this show is 4 years old. I think this is the 4th or 5th season. Every season, Mike McCarthy's been the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Every season, we're having this conversation, talking about how he's not a right fit. And you know what? Jerry continues to run it back. So in the last 15 or so years of the Dallas Cowboys, we've had the Clapper, Jason Garrett, we've had Mike McCarthy, and nothing to show for it. And that's all on Jerry as the owner and the GM.
Yeah, and exactly. And the stadium being open causing them problems to the point where teams are taking advantage of them and forcing them to play into the sun kind of stuff. That's just self-induced stupidity.
The fucking
really.
Lines.
But it's unbelievable that that's how they operate things. But they re-signed Dak Prescott and restructured him relatively in the same offseason. So if you look at his cap number for next year, it's like $90 million.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know, Cleve, the Parsons thing stinks of a player who is frustrated that he has not been paid. And I don't know how they're going to pay him. I really don't know that there's room for them to pay Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and him plus field anything else. I don't know what they're going to do.
I'm sorry, Scott, to cut you. If they were, and you're right, if they were questioning paying Derrick Henry, who could have got $8 million or $9 million, Parsons is worth way more than that. He's a great player when he's available. But you're right, Scott. How are they going to pay him?
He absolutely is.
They're not. They can't afford him. They couldn't afford Derrick Henry. They can't afford Micah Parsons. I mean, if you're going to say you can't afford somebody, have the same energy when your best defensive player is there. So we're talking about paying these guys. And the Dallas Cowboys, I think, are a joke, right? And I think that it's a self-inflicted wound. And I think that that's a perfect segue because a couple things. So Dave's not here. I wanted to do some new things. I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to spotlight Cleve. I'm going to get to you a little bit later. You're going to close out the show. So Scott, I said you're a professional. You're a scout. You're somebody who has knowledge. So I want you to give us something in the trenches, so to speak, something that maybe goes under the radar, because I know that you coach offensive line play, and I know people think they know about offensive line play, but the subtleties, the nuances of offensive line play completely go over everybody's head. So drop some knowledge on us before we start talking about rookie quarterbacks.
Well, what I'm going to talk about as a rookie quarterback is Caleb Williams and the situation around the scheme that the Bears are putting out. The things that they're asking their offense to do is so confusing when you consider the context around this particular quarterback. And he doesn't get, I'm not giving him a pass because there are things that he does that make the situation worse for what they're doing. But to me, it's on coaching, and the majority of it's on coaching, because you already know coming into the NFL that this is a young man who wants to put on like a superhero cape and make plays, run around and make plays and do crazy things, and he's capable of all that stuff. But the problem is that the offense that Shane Waldron was running was sort of like pushing him to do those things. I don't have a great way to describe it, but it's forcing him to hold the ball too long, right? He needs to be, so the question then becomes is, could he even survive in an offense where you said, this is your first read, we expect this player to be open, throw the ball? Would he even do that? Because there were times at USC that he would not. that he would turn down. Hey, it's 3rd and 7, and slot receiver is open at 10 yards, and you stared at him and refused to throw the ball to him. He did that a lot at USC, especially his final year there. But so Waldron does these things. A lot of it is out of like bunch formations and some motions and kind of stuff. But when you bunch everybody together, it takes longer to get into into your routes to where you're actively turning and getting open and getting your head around to show the quarterback, hey, I'm open. The problem is that, like, just think about the timing of it all. Caleb's in like a shotgun formation. Snap comes. He takes 2 steps. So it's essentially at that point like a 5-step drop. And then he hitches, and that's when the ball's got to come out. But the problem is that repeatedly, over and over and over, whether it's 3 guys in their routes or 4, whatever it is, they still have their backs to him, and they're pushing so far down the field that there's nowhere for him to throw the ball to. So now he's got to reset everything. And because of the offensive line, now you get pressure. So now he's running around, and it's ad lib city. So that's the thing where there's a lot of scheme and design that's killing Caleb Williams and forcing him to be, forcing him to run it around, deal with pressure, reset his feet, all that stuff. And to me, if it's a young quarterback, and we're going to get into this, you look around at the young quarterbacks having some level of success, and it's because there's a scheme that they're playing in which forces them to get rid of the ball on time, right? So Waldron's offense absolutely does not do that. If anything, it tells Caleb Williams to run around with the ball more, which to me is death for a young quarterback. And we've seen it. So doesn't surprise me that he gets fired. Now, if we have like 2 extra minutes, it's going to be more than 2. But the history of the Bears and the GM, head coach, quarterback stuff is so weird. And it's a huge circle that is now repeating itself again. And it will repeat itself again. So if you go in, I made some notes.
Look at this guy. Papers?
Yeah, I've got 3 pages of notes on this, and it's nonsense.
He's got
Starting
tape.
back in 2012, the Bears had Jay Cutler as their quarterback through 2016. Lovie Smith was the head coach in 2012. Phil Emery was the new GM. He didn't bring in Lovie Smith. Phil Emery didn't. So he fired them after they went 10-6. Phil Emery fired Lovie Smith. They still had Jay Cutler. They bring in Mark Trestman. We remember the glory days of Mark Trestman. Terrible, right? Still Jay Cutler. He gets fired after 2 years. They bring in John Fox. John Fox comes in with a new GM whose name is Ryan Pace. But the problem is Jay Cutler's still the quarterback. So neither the GM nor the head coach brought in this quarterback. So Cutler stays for a year with Ryan Pace. Then they draft in 2017. They trade up. They pass on Mahomes, but they trade up for Mitch Trubisky. Right. So this is John Fox and Ryan Pace. It doesn't sound like Ryan Pace really consulted with the head coach about Mitch Trubisky, right? It doesn't seem like there's any coordination between those two. But the point is that Fox wasn't really on board with Trubisky. Ryan Pace wasn't on board with Cutler, all this stuff. So John Fox gets fired in 2017, and in comes Matt Nagy. You still have Ryan Pace as GM, but now Matt Nagy is the head coach, and Mitch Trubisky is forced upon him, right? So you can see where this is going.
Yep.
So Ryan Pace ends up getting fired in 2021. 2020, he went through the 2020 season. This is when the last year when they had Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. They trade up. This is the one time where there is some symmetry between GM and head coach, but Pace and Nagy trade up for Fields, right? So it lasts 1 year with Nagy. They fire him. They bring in Matt Eberflus, who didn't draft Justin Fields and is left with Justin Fields for 2 years. And now you're in a situation where Ryan Poles is the GM. Ryan Poles was GM when Trubisky was there. He drafted Fields. Now he's drafted Caleb Williams. But if Matt Eberflus gets fired, you see how the circle goes all around. The new head coach didn't bring Caleb Williams in. there's a chance that Ryan Poles is going to get fired. So the GM didn't bring Caleb Williams in. It's going to be a new offense for him in year 2. What do you like? There's so much there where I think there's a level of let's keep it the same as it. I mean, Shane Waldron needed to get fired simply because it was never going to work for Caleb Williams. But I don't know what they're going to do. So the whole thing, I just think, spells very bad things for Caleb Williams. It just does.
And Cleve, before you come in here, we'll let you do the first grade here. I think this brings up a good point, Scott, that whenever we do draft analysis every year, a lot of people get caught up in the talent. And I think that there's something to be said about raw talent or something that you see on the field. But one of the things I don't hear enough of is where they end up. And I think Caleb Williams, immense amount of talent. Now, I think his ad-libbing did a whole bunch of stuff because Lincoln Riley doesn't know how to recruit a defense, like just either that or just doesn't flat recruit a defense. But we all kind of thought, like, is that going to transit to the NFL? Because that kind of ad-lib stuff takes a special kind of player, needs a special kind of scheme. And he went to the Bears. And the Bears have been a franchise, not quite on Jets level, sorry, Cleve, but they have not really been able to be trusted, especially recently with quarterbacks. And Scott, all those notes that you read off, the most consistent thing on that list is Jay Cutler smoking cigarettes on the sideline. And that spells, right? Because you mentioned Jay Cutler was the quarterback for all of those different regimes. And it's like, well, that's not great. And so you then have Mitch is kind of like Daniel Jones.
Yes.
They overreached for him, was never going to reach. And then, of course, they put him in a system that doesn't work for him. Now, he fit the culture, but it's like it didn't fit on the football field. And so I think when we grade these quarterbacks, I said we're going to grade them by team and also by quarterback, because sometimes quarterback doesn't meet the expectations of a good scheme and vice versa. So, Cleve, you have been a hater of Caleb Williams all season long. You have been consistent. So you're going to give the first grade. How do you grade the Bears and Caleb Williams halfway through this first season?
The Bears is a D-, and I'll tell you why in a second. And Caleb has been an F. And the reason I say F, Scott kind of laid out what the issues for him is as a rookie quarterback in a failed system. But this is the NFL. This isn't USC anymore. You can't hold the ball 4 seconds or whatever it is now. You got to get the ball out of your hands, right? We saw a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you guys mentioned it on Iceman and Coach or if we mentioned it on this show. DJ Moore walked off the field. I don't think he was injured. He was open. Caleb scrambling around, doesn't see him 10 yards away. He just walks off the field, right? Last week, he's on the ground, and not one teammate picked him up. He's flat on his back, and the other guy picked him up from the other team, which I've never seen that in the NFL where guys, it happens, but
isn't that crazy?
That's your quarterback.
It's such a great point you bring up. I mean, it is like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said a word. I should have deferred to you.
Yeah. So
that's it.
I look at
that's your talent, Scott. You say a whole bunch of words and somebody concise.
Yeah. I look at the little nuance stuff.
Welcome to my house.
And again, it speaks volumes. He doesn't help himself in the system, but I got a question for you guys. Do you guys think, and the reason I'm asking this is because of Bo Nix, right? You guys think that when a system is flawed or it's failing that particular quarterback, that they can't tweak it? Do you think it's a indictment on the system, or I thought you could digest this stuff and make this system work? Is it the quarterback or is it the system more so for a rookie quarterback? Because we've seen guys come in. Sean Payton is making Bo Nix look okay in some games, right? And that leads to some of his talent or lack of.
So to me, I look at the Bears situation in particular, and I see Keenan Allen not being used at his best. I mean, Keenan Allen's like one of the best route runners in the NFL. But the problem is if you ask him to run long drives or routes that take a long time for him to get open, he's going to get covered because he's not that fast. So he's not being used at his best. DJ Moore should not be playing as the outside X receiver because he's going to get press physical coverage. Last year, he didn't get any of that kind of coverage, right? So he was very productive last year with Justin Fields, but this year they're asking him to take all that coverage, so he's not being used at his premium. Romo Duns should be the X receiver because he's big and physical enough to do all those things, which would open up everything else, but they're not asking him to do that kind of stuff. they're not throwing the ball to DeAndre Swift. So there's so much that goes into the scheme that just is so flawed for the players that they have. And it's not just Caleb Williams. It's all these other studs too. And I'm not saying Caleb's going to figure it out. And I'm not saying he's going to work. All I'm saying is that the scheme is never going to work for, I don't think any quarterback it would work for, to hold the ball that long in a collapsing pocket with lots of pressure because their O-line kind of stinks. I just don't know why they would be asking him to do. I don't know why they want their offense run like that. It just doesn't make any sense.
And that's the point, right? Is that they have put guys like Eberflus, guys like the GM, they've put them in these positions that they really shouldn't be in the first place. Yep. And, when I look at the Bears, to me, it feels like a situation where the Bears certainly are not helping. And Dave's comment down there talking about a quarterback being in a worse position. I mean, he certainly is in a bad situation. There is no doubt about that. But to Cleve's point, I think that one of the elements of growth in the NFL is that you start to recognize these things and try to overcome the adversity that comes with your adjustment to the NFL. But Cleve, watching that game against the Patriots, I mean, there wasn't much 9 sacks. Like, that's horrible against a 2-win team.
Fireable offense.
Yeah. Just awful. So I think we all agree that the Bears, and Caleb to an extent, I think needs to take ownership of that. I think we agree that they're not getting a very good grade from us. I think Cleve said an F for Caleb and a D-. So Cleve, let's talk about another quarterback who I'm sure you're going to absolutely rake over the coals. And I'm kidding. Jaden Daniels.
I like this kid, man. I like this kid a lot. He's flashing.
Me too.
He's flashing all the things you would want in a pick. And it goes to what I always say. I like guys that stay in college a little longer. He stayed a very long time, but the experience of having that many games versus having one season or 17 games or whatever it is, it speaks volumes. And Washington looks good. They've got something to build around. They should be happy at what they got in the building, at least at the quarterback position. So,
what about you, Scott?
Totally agree. Very much 180 degrees from what the Bears are doing. If Jaden Daniels was forced to sit back behind that Bears O-line and not have anybody to throw to, for a very long time, he wouldn't look like this. But he's in Washington. He looks phenomenal. There are things he's doing, not necessarily last week, but big picture wise, it's year one in the NFL for him, and he doesn't look phased at all. They have to be thrilled that they got him at 2. They have to be thrilled.
That was going to be my point, is when I watch him play football, I forget that he's a rookie. I forget that he's a guy who should be learning, and he will take some lumps as the season goes along. But for the most part, the poise, right? Like in the pocket, he looks like a guy who's comfortable. And I say that about Jordan Love too. Is like he looks like a guy who's just fine in the pocket, right? He's got a bounce to his step. Jaden Daniels also, the thing I noticed about him, the reverse of Caleb Williams, that team magnetized toward him. He is their leader, and he may not be the vocal leader, but there's something about Jaden Daniels that has that team believing and saying, this is our guy. And you could not do it any better than what's happening. And Dave talking about Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, a guy who I have said failed upward in his career, took a step down, and he's doing amazing work with Jaden Daniels and that offense. And that team may not be scary necessarily come playoff time, but man, are they light years ahead. And this area down here could use it.
Fact.
I mean, there has to be so much excitement brewing for that team and this new owner. Everything's new there, new quarterback. And are they 6-3? What are they at this point?
I think they're 6-3 after losing to the Steelers.
And just it has to be so exciting to be a Commanders fan because it's probably a lot like the Lions. For years, the old team was there's nothing there, right? Nothing. This is new. This is different. It's exciting. Imagine what it's going to look like when they give him. Terry McLaurin's really good, but when you give him whatever receiver you're going to give him in this draft, or whatever you're going to do to help him out, it's just like you can see where it's going to go and how electric he can be as a quarterback leading that offense. It's going to be really good.
So do we all agree that both the organization and the quarterback probably get an A grade so far halfway through the season?
I have no problems.
For now, but
For
that's
now.
subject to change week to week. It seems
Absolutely,
like,
but
yeah.
we're halfway
Yeah.
through the season. So
Yeah.
let's move on, guys, to my team, New England Patriots and Drake May. Now, Drake May has not played the full season. I agreed with them playing Brissett, but obviously Gerard Mayo, the fans got tired of watching 130 yards on 35 attempts. So Drake May comes in, and I will say that obviously he's gone through some growing pains. We've seen some interceptions, not great, in terms of the decision making. But I also still get the sense that, not to the Jaden Daniels effect, but Drake May seems to be leading that football team, and they seem to be doing right by him for now. And they've looked better, I think, with him than without him. But Scott, I want your thoughts on that.
I know Dave used to just bust my balls because I wasn't a huge Drake May guy coming into the league, but in recognition that if he does grow as a player, all the stuff is there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think he's been really, really good for what the Patriots have on offense. It's not like there's a ton of weapons there for him, but he's able to do things and get the offense looking a little more electric than I thought that they would look in year one. And I think that, he deserves some credit for being able to inject some life there, but they do need weapons for him.
Absolutely.
However, we have to go on what we see for now. And at this point, there has to be a lot of optimism about his play, while recognizing he still has he's got a lot to figure out, and he's got a long way to go, but all the raw stuff is there. Yeah. It's just, can you mine that, and get to a diamond in the future? I don't know, but it's there. It is there. You can see it.
His grade, I think, is almost, we can't determine it yet because the sample size is so small. Like if he'd started game one, we'd have half a season. We kind of would have a little bit, but I mean, he also didn't play. He had the concussion, so we don't know a whole lot. So he's kind of like in that NA category. But Cleve, what do you think?
Same. It's fair. It's unfair to judge him on what we saw so far because of what you just said. So yeah, I would say I give him a pass for now, and we'll see how the season rounds out for him.
All right, so the last one, Bo Nix. You already mentioned him, Cleve, and he is with my favorite head coach, Sean Payton. I hate that guy. And Bo Nix has looked serviceable. So, Cleve, why don't you start since you are the one who brought him up in the first place?
I would give him a hard C, pause, because he's a rookie. But he has flashes of doing some good things, and then he's not afraid to challenge the coach. We've already seen that. Like they've had some dust ups and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure in the building they probably have some cute exchanges or whatever. But he's serviceable, like you said. I think he's mid, but definitely playing better than Caleb Williams. And how old is he? 25. He's older. He's older than most of the.
Dave always says he's 30, so
yeah.
I just assume he's somewhere between 25 and 30.
He's older than the crop that came in.
Yeah, I mean, he's an older rookie.
He played
forever.
So, and again, I'm a big fan of guys who play forever in college because I just like the fact that they fancy trash. I like the fact that they're that they've learned a lot more, that they've seen some stuff, or at least seen some more out there for the most part. So yeah, I would say C+ ish for that.
And Scott, is this more scheme than player?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it is definitely scheme. I mean, they targeted the player that they really wanted in the draft. I think there's an understanding that he fits the Drew Brees sort of model of, we don't really care about arm strength. We don't necessarily care about the ability to force or push the ball down the field. We want a guy who can play inside our offense, run our offense, move the chains, and that kind of stuff. And he can do those things. The thing that stands out to me is he does not look like he's physically overwhelmed at all in any way playing in the NFL. So, when you look at the scheme, the concepts around him, and what they're doing on offense, I think it's impressive. I think it's impressive that the Denver Broncos take the Chiefs to the limit last Sunday with Bo Nix as their quarterback.
Yep.
And not a lot of great stuff around him either. So I think I think it's scheme, but it's also smart stuff from a team to recognize, all right, this is what we can do with this guy. We don't need Caleb Williams. We'd rather have Bo Nix to run our offense because it's our offense and it's what we do. So, I give a lot of credit to the organization for drafting a player like Nix, and I think he's been fine.
Yeah, he's been fine, and I think that it's a matter of, they're 5-4, 5-5, something like that. So, hats off to them, because I honestly thought Sean Payton was going to be overwhelmed and be out of the league pretty soon, but he certainly is showing me after my rant last year, right before New Year's, which got like 28,000 views because everybody was like, what are you talking about, Sean Payton? And I was like, sorry, fellas, I'm just not a big fan. What can I say? And speaking of coaches, let's move on to some first-year head coaches. So a guy that I think was the biggest splash in the offseason, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. They've looked really good, but Scott, what do you think about Jimbo and the Chargers so far?
He is a character in the most bizarre way, but I would imagine that team, those players love him. He is just a strange dude. But any Chargers fan watching probably is completely in love with him.
I'd imagine so,
because of how good they look in every way.
And one thing that he brings that the Chargers have not had historically is he does win usually the big games, right? And that's something that the Chargers have had sort of dragging with them like an anchor, is that they always seem to fall flat. And I think you call him snake bit, Cleve.
Definitely snake bit.
And he brings a winning culture. So I think that he's doing a good job. Now, Cleve, let's talk about Dan Quinn and the Commanders. My only complaint about Dan Quinn is he needs to turn his hat around, because that shit is driving me crazy at whatever age he is.
Yeah.
Drives me fucking nuts.
Like I said,
what about you,
he
Cleve?
inherited a great quarterback. So, he's benefiting from having that. If he had someone else, would they look as good? So he's kind of riding the coattails of who he has, and hopefully they can develop him into a great quarterback for many, many, many years to come. So yeah, he's doing a great job.
I think he did a great thing by not taking the first head coaching job that came his way after he had some success as defensive coordinator in Dallas. Because remember, 28-3, that stink is on him as a head coach with the Falcons. And so I think he learned a lot from that coaching stint. And we saw, Cleve, I think you said it for a couple of years. You're like, the Falcons organization just plummeted after that. And Dan Quinn was the recipient of that hate. And so he didn't just take a job. He waited, and he took a job that seemed to work out for him. And I think at the time we were like, all right, that's whatever, right? It was a very uninspired hire. Now they brought in Jaden Daniels. They're doing the right thing. They bring in Kingsbury, and he may not be the smartest guy on the team, but he's putting guys around him that are doing what they need to do to win and develop that young quarterback. And for that, he gets a really high grade from me, even with the backward hat. So I think we're all in agreement with
Sometimes
that.
you don't have to be the smartest guy on the planet or in the room to recognize your own limitations.
Yes.
And for him to say, yeah, I'm a defense guy, I don't know shit about offense. I'm going to hire a guy who does. But I don't want that guy talking to the media. I don't want that guy dealing with defense or any of that stuff. You handle the offense.
Yes.
I think there's a little bit of intelligence in that, like, recognizing what your own limitations are and then kind of growing out from there. They're doing, he's been good. He's been really good.
Scott, you did that today where you said I delete emails rapidly and I delete important emails and I have to go back. So you know your strengths, your weaknesses, and you're willing to admit them openly to everybody. So let's talk about Raheem Morris with the Falcons, 6-4. And, I think that was a hire that kind of surprised a lot of people since Belichick was going out for that job. But Cleve, what do you think?
I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I think I always liked him as a coach. They're utilizing, as we always say on this show in the past, they're utilizing their running game, and they're also utilizing their tight ends. Tight end, and then what's the kid, Moody, the receiver, looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're scheming up pretty good. So
he was in Chicago; they could use him.
Another Chicago, the Bears. I swear, it's like 8 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's 8 degrees of the Chicago Bears. We're just constantly going to talk about the Bears because they're all over the show.
Yeah. So I think he's doing a great job. And again, some of these coaches, again, we can't say that they're first year, but they're first year with a new team. So he has some tread on his tires. He's kind of been in some really good coaching teams on coaching with some good staff. So I give him a high grade because that team looks really good. That team looks really good. Kirk Cousins. Wow.
What about you, Scott?
The same. I don't think it's easy to go in anywhere and be a first-year guy with new personalities and new coaches and new people and all these things, and to have success on the field. I'm not sure it's quite as simple as some of these guys make it look. But the Falcons they're a good team. They're eventually going to be a team that I think teams in the NFC are not going to want to see in round one of the playoffs. Which says, I think that's probably indicative of how I feel about it. He's doing a good job. Is it perfect? No, but he's doing a really good job of getting their offensive pieces involved. Cousins looks like he's playing better. I think the first couple of games with him, you could tell that his leg, the torn Achilles was a problem.
Wasn't quite
there. He just couldn't drive to throw the ball, and he was still wanting to fit the ball down the field into tight windows, and he just wasn't capable of doing it. But he's doing a good job, very good job.
So we're going to skip Dave Canellis because we're going to talk about him during Hold'em and Fold'em, or Hold'em or Fold'em. So let's talk about Mike McDonald and the Seahawks. Scott, you first.
I like him a lot. I think his departure from the Ravens has really led to a defensive problem.
Yes.
So, that tells you, I think he's a really, really good coach, but some of their problems have been injuries and all kinds of stuff on offense. So it's hard to know exactly what it's going to be at the end of the year, but I think he's a very good coach trying to correct some systematic stuff that may have been lingering from the last couple of years. I think he's a good coach. I think he's doing a good job.
What about you, Cleve?
Kind of sentiment what Scott said. Nothing for me. Probably a B minus. And again, it's because of the injuries and just the weird stuff that goes on with the Seahawks. Like Metcalf's in, Metcalf's out. Like you can't scheme for a guy every week and when you don't know if he's available or not. So, B minus ish. I would give him.
That sounds about fair. They've kind of gone under the radar because they look good. They beat the Lions early, and then they've kind of fallen back offensively. It's always a little challenging when you have a defensive-minded coach in an offensive-minded league, or what was an offensive-minded league. Now it's who the hell knows what it is. But two more. So in the worst quarterback room in the league has to be Brian Callahan and the Titans with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph.
Ugh.
Who I got wrong. I mixed them up because they're basically the same person. Oh, by the way, I did see Will Levis in a mayonnaise commercial. Like we're doing that now.
I thought that was awesome. Weird. Oh man.
Yeah.
Weird shit.
He puts mayonnaise in his coffee. I think that's why he fell to round 2.
Why is he like that's disgusting? Like we don't even have to discuss that. But Will Levis plays quarterback like mayonnaise and coffee would taste. So there you go.
Boom.
All right, so we'll just move on from the Titans because they just absolutely did not matter, and I hate that division. Gerard Mayo and the Pats.
Yeah.
I'll let Cleve go first.
Like I said, I think it was a mistake giving, and this is my take, giving the reins to Brissett. I think should have played Drake earlier and just kind of see what you had there, but especially when the offense was sputtering with Brissett. There's new life there. There's some...
Sputtering is underselling it.
Yeah, I don't know. They beat us. You guys beat us. So
not the first time, but the second time they did. That was without Drake May too, wasn't he hurt? And Brissett came in and took that game because you're a Brissett guy.
But we're talking to coach, so that's why the coach was able to win. Yeah, I know. Coach was able to win with what he had on the field. But he's doing. To me, it's a year 0. Because you're coming in after the greatest coach possibly in football and obviously the greatest New England head coach that you guys have ever had. So filling those shoes, it's crazy. So I'm giving him a year 0, and I'm probably giving him like maybe a hard B, in his efforts because again, rookie quarterback, trying to get the guys together. So yeah,
hard D would have landed better. Scott, what about you?
So this goes back to a little bit like when the Cardinals' first game with James Gannon last year, the way they played, it was very obvious that I had discounted James Gannon as a coach. So it was impressive the way that defense played and how hard they played, right? That's the exact same vibe I got out of the gate for the Patriots with Mayo. that, yes, they might not have as much talent as the teams around them, and certainly they don't have all that much talent on offense, but they are not lacking for effort and for playing for this guy. And I think that speaks, that's everything that you need to know. He's getting everything out of those guys. And yes, they're a little bit limited right now, just from a personnel standpoint.
Yeah.
But that's, he's doing everything he can to field a team that's competitive and that will play for 60 minutes. He's doing that. I think he's doing a great job.
The reason I gave him the B was because he came out, was in week 3, and called the team soft. And that kind of lit a fire under these guys to get in there because, again, I'm from the old school. These are grown men getting paid to play a game. And if he sees that they're not giving that effort, call them soft. You're being soft. So that's why he's pushing them he's squeezing that rag to get as much water out of that as possible. So, that's why I gave him the hard B there.
Now, Gerard Mayo is the anti-Antonio Pierce, and we're going to get to him in a second because we're going to fire some coaches here, fellas. But when I agree with you, and it's funny reading the Boston Globe upstairs, even though I can't stand Boston sports fandom anymore, they talked about how hard the team is playing for Gerard Mayo. And I think that this early on, with as little talent as they have, and a relatively young ball club too, like you kind of want to see that. And so I think that he is going to be given the tools to do so. Year 0, not really a good rating year, but I think we've seen growth, and that's all you can ask for. So, fellas, are we ready to have some fun playing hold 'em or fold 'em with some NFL coaches? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to fire off some names. Now, first of all, we should say rest in peace to Robert Saleh and Dennis Allen's careers as head coaches. They're perfectly alive. I did not kill them. They have been fired so far. Robert Saleh, not the problem in New York. Dennis Allen, probably the problem, but who the hell knows, right? So I'm going to go back and forth. Cleve, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to go back and forth between the two of you. Are you guys ready to go?
Let's go.
Ready.
All right, Cleve, Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys.
Fire.
All right, Scott,
Out.
Matt Eberflus and the Bears.
Oh, I just gave you the whole list of reasons not.
You can't not fire him after that whole diatribe.
I know, but some of it also points to don't change so much. Right. But I also think that it's such a weird situation. I might even fire the GM there. I might just clean sweep it all. I at this point, I'm firing him.
They should have swept it last year. Like in the offseason, I do not understand. They got rid of everybody and said, well, we'll keep Flus. Like, what are we doing? Like, that's not. But this speaks to what you talked about before. All right. So 2 coaches fired. All right, Cleve. Number 3, Dave Canellis and the Panthers.
Oh, yeah. Fire.
Hold up, because I didn't bring him up earlier, but I disagree. The reason I disagree is, one, I think the Panthers have looked better, and I think I didn't realize that Dave Canellis was a first-year head coach with the Panthers. Like, I thought this was his second year, and I'm like, what is he doing with Bryce Young? But I think it was a comedy of errors between a young quarterback who's obviously scared shitless because of the situation that he's in. I think Canellis learned a little bit. I think Andy Dalton came in, maybe showed him a few things, and they have looked more competent. Now, beating the Giants in Germany is not exactly winning the Super Bowl, but it's progress. And I think they need to give him a little bit more time, considering the fact that he's only halfway through his first head coaching stint, or his head coaching stint with the Panthers. Scott, what do you think? I
agree with you. I would not be firing him halfway through his first season with the roster that they have to deal with. I just wouldn't.
There you go. Dave wants to fire Eberflus via text, so I think that's a lot softer than what Cleve was going to do. He's not going to give him the Herm Edwards treatment, which is just awful because as you're coming off the field. All right, Cleve. All right, wait. Sorry, go ahead.
The reason to defend my position about Canales. So you come out and say Bryce Young is your guy, then you bench him, then you get behind the red rifle, then you pull a red rifle out of a game that was critical to put your franchise quarterback almost, or the guy that you guys have after Dalton goes back to the couch, to get probably hurt. So I don't know as a coach if he's on brand with the Panthers or if he's just not all there. So that's why I said fire him.
I think you're not allowing for growing pains as a head coach. And I think that that's what we saw with him. Now, if he continues to do this kind of stupid shit later on in the season or next year, then I think we have a discussion. But I think as of right now, halfway through, it's a little tough to judge.
But we have seen first year firings of coaches. That's why it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
It's not, but I'm not sure you want to put Urban Meyer in the same discussion as poor Dave Canellis. That's not really that fair, folks. He's not kicking anybody on the team that we know of. All right. We got a couple of interesting names here, maybe some controversial names, but Scott, we're going to go to you. Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins.
Ooh. I like Mike McDaniel a lot. I would not fire him. I do think that the Tua injury derailed their offense, and injuries around, have just brutalized that team. But I get why there would be some discussion around it. I just think that the context around, Tua just got back. And for God's sake, stop trying to tackle people in the open field, you goof.
Speaking of quarterbacks that don't help themselves.
Yeah. So for that reason, I would give him. I'd have to give him a pass and just, hey, it needs to be better. But I understand that Tua is sort of the engine for that offense, and having him miss as much time as he has, what are you going to do? It's
I know Cleve's going to fire him, so we're not going to go to you just yet. But, Scott, I do want to ask you, when does the currency for Tua's injuries start to run out for McDaniel? Because at the end of the day, you've got to win football games.
I think it's at the end of this year, they're going to have to take a real hard look at what's in place. We know Tua's going to have some injuries. We know that the head injuries are a thing with him. What's the plan? Because it's eventually coming. And the plan can't be Skylar Thompson and was it Tyler Huntley or whoever else it was? I don't even know.
Yeah, whatever. I forget. Huntley was the guy who was in Baltimore. Now is there. It's trash. Whatever it has been is trash.
Yes. So that can't be. If you know these things, you can't just accept it when it happens.
No.
So does that mean you're moving away from potentially Tua because of the volatility of his own health? I don't know.
Just paid him too.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is, but I think he's a smart guy.
Yes.
I think he understands offense. He really understands offense. And they have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of good stuff going down there. It's just they haven't had everybody together at one time to get rolling week after week after week.
That's fair.
That's where I'm at with it.
I think that's fair. All right, Cleve, I think this guy is a guy 2 out of 3 of you had as winning coach of the year this year, Shane Steichen and the Colts.
Oh, shit. Man. Oh.
Not prepared for that.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation.
It's like the reverse of McDaniels for me. That team has flashed, but yeah, I'll probably have to let him go. I'll probably have to let him go.
Oh, wow. What about you, Scott?
So I want to see what Anthony Richardson looks like this week and going forward because he has been named the starter for the rest of the season.
Yes.
And my thoughts are if Richardson looks better or, is trending to look better, then I would keep Steichen. It's not an easy thing to take a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, as raw as he was, and get him worked out and, dialed in and figured out immediately. But if this couple week window of having him sit has helped him to understand the things that he needs to do to be an effective player, then I think it's really good coaching what they've done, even though they're losing. You know what I mean? And I tend to want to give these guys more time than they probably deserve in some ways anyway. But if the coaching job over the last couple of weeks has simply allowed Richardson to grow as a kid, as a player, and to play better, then I think the coach you've lost 3 games or whatever it is in a row, but that's almost meaningless because the big picture is that you did improve because Richardson is going to play better, and that's smart coaching. It's good coaching. It's what I would want.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating situation, but I thought I'd bring it up because it kind of brings this discussion out. So another interesting scenario, Scott. This is a team that you've talked about a lot this year, even from the offseason. What about Zach Taylor and the Bengals?
Wow. Okay, so my guess is he will get fired. The responsibility for a lot of what goes on there, I think, is ownership driven.
Sure.
Some of the dysfunction and the weirdness around them this offseason was Jamar Chase
and
him not getting paid. and T Higgins kind of whatever's going on with Higgins in his in his tagged year, all that stuff. I don't think he deserves to get fired because there's a lot there. There's a lot of context there. But at the end of the day, you have to win football games, and you're burning through the best years of Joe Burrow's career.
That's my point.
Yes. So, but then I just throw it back. Who are you bringing in?
Right. I mean, there's always that, but I think when Burrow has the kind of game that he had on Thursday and they still don't win, and he's had a lot of games like that this year, at some point, like I said, it peaked. They went to the Super Bowl, and I said it, Cleve. I said it on this show that Burrow might not get back to the Super Bowl because Dan Marino never got back, and it's really difficult to get back to the Super Bowl. And if they keep, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, who do they bring in? I have no idea. But all I know is that I'm watching Joe Burrow have these games, and I'm thinking he's got to be getting frustrated. And they are 3 years removed from their Super Bowl appearance, and they've been declining.
The end of that game was atrocious. The play calling when they had that, and I would have rather taken Lamar and those guys into overtime than to try to win it there. I would have just tied the game. That's just my take.
There's a lot of analytics discussions.
Can you imagine though if you do that and the Ravens win the coin toss and you just walk to the locker room because the game's over?
That's a whole other show.
You can't be scared. Like seriously, like that's why these guys are playing the game. You know what I'm saying? That's why they keep the score.
See, that's why I think they went for 2 though, is because they weren't afraid. And they did, I think to me they did make the right call.
I agree.
I didn't like the non-call on Hudson near the goal line.
And what are we doing here? These refs.
Yeah, and especially Burrow getting drilled in the face mask with the dude's hand. It's like, you guys call that all the time.
Yes.
This is the game's on the line. These guys got to
sell it better.
That's not the first time this year that a missed.
You got to sell it better.
Yes,
I would lay motionless on the field.
I
would lay motionless on the field just to sell that. Swear to God. You guys are laughing. I would lay motionless on the field.
My God. Well, speaking of motionless on the field, how about Kevin Stefanski and the Browns?
Ooh.
Cleve, that's to you.
They got to blow that whole thing up. Again, I mean, they've probably blown it up 20, 30 times.
Pause.
Right? Yeah, pause. They got to, because the Watson thing might be over because he might not play again. I mean, I'm not as hard on him, pause, as Dave is, but I think they have to do something. That team is awful, and I don't know if Myles Garrett wants to stick around, and they want to build a new stadium, and they got some plans, but that team, they got to blow it up. So I think they should start.
Myles Garrett would have looked good in the Lions uniform.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, he would have. My guess is if they're planning on drafting a quarterback, it would be a really good time to reset some things.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, this one's going to be easy. Antonio Pierce.
He gets the good one.
He looks like he doesn't even want the job.
It almost seems like it, right? Like, and I don't know that anybody right now. I'm not sure anybody would want to coach out there for Mark Davis.
Scott, week one, you and I talked about this. He's punting on like 4th and 6 from their like 38-yard line down 9, and I'm like, just quit, just leave the team. Just say that you don't want to coach in the NFL anymore. It's okay. Like just admit it out loud because why? Like and they hired players like him. Well, I'm not necessarily even convinced of that. They can like him all he want, but he can't coach worth a damn. So
they have to move on, and it's for the same reason. They're going to be. I mean, they cannot be sold on him long term. They're going to be addressing the quarterback position in this offseason. They are.
Yes.
And you need to do it with a coach that you feel is going to be there for a while. Otherwise, you get caught in that. Does this coach fit our new quarterback who we can't get away from? Yeah.
I'm a little nervous, though, that Mark Davis chooses that haircut every day. He might choose Antonio Pierce for a lot longer than just this
anything
year.
is possible if that's the choice you're making.
Good Lord. Yeah, speaking of which, all right, guys, one more, and I know what Cleve is going to say, but Cleve, what about Doug Peterson?
I mean, he should have been gone a while back, but yeah, he has to go. Fire. And Trevor Lawrence is a bust. I got to say that. The verdict is out. He's a bust.
We know you're going to say it every time.
Yeah, he's a bust.
Every episode until somebody finally believes it. So, guys, I think we kept only like 2 coaches. Scott and I were a lot more forgiving. I think we kept more coaches than we fired. I think Cleve fired most of these coaches, but that's okay because Cleve is the old school man. All right, Cleve, we got a few more minutes left. We're bumping up. We're past 8:45 now because we had some audio issues. So Cleve, we're going to play Still in the League. Now I only have 3 guys, so I want you on a scale of 1 to 5 to tell me how surprised you are. 1 being the least surprised, 5 being the most surprised.
Yeah,
You ready?
let's do it.
All right, Samaje Perine.
Wow.
That name kills me every time.
Is it
playing for the Chiefs, by
is
the
it
way.
Samaj James spelled backwards? I think that's James spelled backwards, bro.
Almost.
Yeah, something like that, right? I don't know.
Almost. Very close.
Wow.
So scale of 1 to 5. How surprised are you that he is getting carries for the Chiefs?
4.
All right. Number 2, starter for your Jacksonville Jaguars, Mac Jones.
I'm not too surprised about that one. 1.
I just forgot he even existed, let alone anything
He's
else.
still young.
I know, but this one surprised the shit out of me. And he's even, listen. This last one surprised the shit out of me because I was thinking about him the other day. And when I heard his name, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe he still plays in the league. And he's not that old. Kenny Pickett played for the Eagles when they were up big.
Kenny Pickett.
Wow.
Now that's a bust.
Yeah, he's a bust.
No kidding. But I completely forgot about him. Like, I completely forgot about him. When they said Kenny Pickett in for Hurts, I was like,
Wait a minute,
oh, he's a backup somewhere? I thought he just vanished.
that's the Kenny Pickett from the Steelers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. They moved on quickly.
Yeah,
Sure did.
You think? Wow. Yeah, I'm surprised at that one. 5.
That one, I'm telling you guys, I was like, I shouldn't be this surprised, but it surprised the shit out of me when I heard about it. All right, Cleve, you're going to close out this show for us before we get to some housekeeping. So you are an old school guy. We're calling this Cover Zero, Cleve, because we know the Jets love to run Cover Zero and ruin getting the first round pick. So Cleve, this is your spot to give us your unfiltered old school take on anything you want, football or non-football.
Football. So Jets Nation, I feel your pain. I feel your pain every year, it seems like now. I think Rodgers should shoulder some of the blame of ruining this team. I think Devontae Adams made a terrible mistake coming to the Jets when he could have went to either the Chiefs. He could have went to the Chiefs before they got Nuke, and he could have went somewhere else. He came to hitch his wagon to a situation that's not good. And I don't want to see Rodgers again with us. He might play football again somewhere else, but that experiment has failed. And again, I gave him a year off because of the injury, but he looks like dog shit. So yeah, I just don't like this team always taking somebody at the end of their career. Like, we get guys when they're washed or close to being washed or just done. And this is another failed attempt to re-energize his franchise. I sent you guys a video of the chant in the stadium, and if you're ever in that stadium, it's loud. Sell the team. Sell the team. That's where we're at. Sell the team. So yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for him to suit up in that gangrene, bro, because it's going to happen again next year. You got another year of this bullshit, I feel like, because I feel like the Jets are in this position of like, what do we do? And I feel like him being bad sells tickets, but I feel you. Gentlemen, this has been a really good time. I do apologize for whatever audio issues that we had, but it is what it is. We're amateurs, not professionals, so it does happen. I want to remind everybody, though, obviously you want to check out Political Football every week. If you haven't, follow them on TikTok at Political FB Pod is the handle there. If you are following here, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're listening in audio, Apple, Spotify, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, all of that good stuff, because we love not only the viewers, but we love the listeners as well. So, Cleve, that was your monologue. Scott, do you have anything else you want to add before we get the hell out of here?
I'm good. It was fun.
I am. Yes. Okay. Very good. I was expecting you to say something more than I'm good, but you know what? It is what it is. I think this was a fantastic show. I want to say thank you to everybody who watched, listen, as I always say. Hope this finds everybody well. Hope this finds everybody safe. And guess what? We'll see y'all down the road. This is Political Football.